Welcome to Knife Chats. If you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you.
This video is going to be called In Defense of the Chinese-Made Boy Scouts of America Knives. And I know a lot of people are not happy that the Boy Scouts of America started having their knives made in China. But there's a lot of good reasons for it. This happened basically shortly after Camillus went bankrupt in 2007. And initially, Barron's son, I think, was contracted to make them in America. But also, they started making them in China. And Barron's son really could not compete with the price of the knives being made in China. I won't go into all the politics of it, but it really comes down to the Boy Scouts needed to make a knife that Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts could afford to purchase. And they could not get that done in the United States because of labor costs and everything else, and they just could not get an affordable price for a boy to buy a knife. You got to remember, they were not making these knives for collectors. They were making these knives to be used by boys. And so this knife, such as the Cub Scout knife and the Boy Scouts 4-blade knife and the Deluxe knife, all had to be priced at a price that children could afford. Not what collectors could afford, but what kids could afford when they're learning how to camp and everything else. And so they went to China and they got the knives made at an affordable price for children. They weren't concerned about the collector's market. They've never been concerned about the collector's market. What they were concerned about was getting a quality knife for kids so that they could be introduced to knives and how to use knives. So let's take a look at some of these knives. This is the Cub Scout knife that they have here. And if we see the Cub Scout logo there, this knife has changed very little over 50 years or so. I think they first came out right after World War II or just before World War II, so they go back a ways. And these have a wonderful blue bone on them. You see the brass liners and spacers, bone on both sides, very smooth, nice nickel silver bolsters, a nice tight bail on the back, a Spearmaster blade with a really nice blade etch on there. You see stainless china. I'm sure that upsets a lot of people. I was a little upset myself. And the blade opens all the way, and got the half stop, which is a safety measure for people just starting off on knives. Decent enough snap on it. You got the reamer on the back, and it locks because of the liner locks they have here. And we close it back up. And the screwdriver cap lifter, which also locks. And that is also a safety feature for young kids just learning to use everything, because this is what they're going to be doing with it, and they don't need it closing up. Especially the same thing with the reamer on the other end. You don't want it closing up, so it's nice and good and tight. And it looks really good. Mirror polish finish. 440 stainless steel blades. Nice brass liner that really works well. So it's a quality made knife. Sure, it's made in China, but it's still a very good knife, and it's got bone scales as opposed to cheap plastic scales. And it's got a nice detail there with the Cub Scout logo. Then you have really nice brown bone scales. Haven't had bone scales on a Boy Scout knife in I don't know how long. The logo looks great. Nice safety can opener. Good snap there closing. The short screwdriver. Nice cap lifter. You know, it's got a nice little reamer there. And your spear blade with the blade etch there, all looking really good. Again, 440A, yeah, stainless china. They're not being secretive about it. But you know what? Most Boy Scouts, in the 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, unless their parents push their China agenda on them, they're really not going to care. They're going to look at this knife and say, hey, this is a really cool knife. Nickel silver bolsters, brass liners and spacers, good solid back springs. It's a solid, well-made knife. And pretty good bail there. Nicely pinned on and everything. It's a good-looking knife. Yeah, it's made in China, but you can't really fault the quality of it. And it's $15, $16. And then the Deluxe, man, it's just like any other Boy Scout knife. You got your 3 layers here. You got your brass liners and spacers. Got your little Phillips screwdriver there at the end. Can opener. Nice reamer. And you got your cap lifter and your screwdriver tip there. Did we look at that blade edge? Just as nice as any other blade edge I've ever seen on a Boy Scout knife. And the little Tenderfoot logo is just as good as ever too. And you got really nice brown bone handles, nice jigging. All in all, a really good looking knife. Yes, it's made in China, but you can't really fault the quality of it. It's a really good, solid knife, and for $18, it's hard to argue with it. And then you also have a few other knives showing up here, like this 5.5-inch lockback. And you can actually flip this open. I don't know if I'll be able to do it on camera, but yeah, there you go. Flip it open. Nice 4-inch blade. Got your official logo there. Again, 440A. Tenderfoot nicely in there. Really nice pack of wood handles. Really good solid build. Got a nice lanyard hole on it. Not a bad knife. And this one's only like $8. How do you argue with something like that when a boy wants a good knife? And that's really what we got to remember. The Boy Scouts were making knives for kids to use, not for adults to collect. And in order for them to have a knife that a kid could use, they needed a knife that the kid could buy. This is for a Cub Scout to buy. It's not for a grown-up to buy. This is for a Boy Scout to buy. It's not for a grown-up collector to buy. It's a knife. It's going to be his first knife he'll ever buy, and he will treasure it. Same with the Cub Scout knife. First knife he'll ever get, and he will treasure it. It'll either be given to him, he'll either be awarded it, or he'll have to buy it out of his own money. How can you sit there and say, Boy Scouts, you should have stuck with a USA-made knife and made a poor kid spend $40 or $50 for his knife instead of $12, $15? Think about it for a while. The Boy Scouts needed to go and have knives made in China, not because they were being stingy or being anti-American or anything like that. They were doing it so that a Boy Scout or a Cub Scout could afford to purchase the knife. It wasn't so that an adult could go and buy another USA-made knife.
As always, thanks for dropping by, and remember, you're only as sharp as your knife.